Hello again, friends. For today's presentation, I'll be discussing my leadership and management for my time spent as the non-commissioned officer in charge of the Fatality Search and Recovery Team. So a little bit of background on that. The mission behind the Fatality Search and Recovery Team, as part of the SERP, I'm sure a lot of you have heard of, is the dignified and respectful recovery of fatalities in response to natural disasters like your earthquakes, hurricane, tornadoes, or your seaborne events. We always train to the 10 kiloton nuclear bomb because that's the most hazardous thing we could be called to respond to. And our job is to get the fatalities out of the way so that the first responders and the people trying to save the survivors are able to do that without having to walk over the unfortunately dead bodies and really have that mindset, because we want them focused and being able to respond and save lives. The first thing that we had to do when this mission showed up was we had to pick our team. And the way that we kind of did that as far as the diversity of it was we had to strike a balance between brute force. We needed people that were able to run these heavy generators and put tents up. And unfortunately, with our fatalities, the average American is heavier these days. So it sounds bad, but we do not want to run the risk of dropping someone in the middle of a recovery. The media would love to get a video of us doing that. So we needed some actual strength on the team. And we also had to have the organizational and decision-making background. We need people in there that can make decisions. We're going to come across different scenarios constantly, so you have to have people that can take in information on the fly and make a decision off of that without always going up with their leadership. And then organization, there's one role on there that we had that was the scribe, and they work hand in hand with the NCOIC. They're making a detailed account of the entire event for posterity and after actions, and really has to be able to take in a lot of information, and there's going to be people yelling, and they have to be very detail oriented. So the way that I utilize leadership and management to lead our team members towards success, for me, always begins with communication. I have to be able to go in with an outline of what the project is and the expectations. For example, on exercise or real world missions, we first need to get there and get the site set up and operational. Then our first step is to link up with their S&E or search and extraction and find out what their initial recon was, where are the major hazards at, have they found any fatalities that we can go ahead and go get. And on top of that, it's not just communication with my team, like I was mentioning, it's with other agencies. It's with our military counterparts, our local law enforcement. There's communication needs to happen horizontally, vertically. Over communication is always a good thing in these incidents where everyone is high stressed, and you feel a lot more comfortable if you have more information than if you think that there's something that you're missing. And then to go along with leadership skills, for this project to be successful, the management skills I utilized were primarily the technical, analytical, and decision making. So technical always begins with I have to know what the job is if I'm going to ask someone else to do it. I can't say go perform this task and then them ask a question and I say go figure it out. I have to be able to lead them through to be able to make this project successful. Analytical, I kind of went over earlier. With this SERP and FSERP mission, we're going to have different variables every time that we approach a scene. We're never going to show up and be like, I know exactly what to do because I have faced this before. So we need a team that is able to take in information on the fly and be able to come up with a response to that. Whatever the scene that they're rolling up on, they might have rubble on top of them that they can't get to. You need to be able to know that you have counterparts in the Army you can reach out to, and they can bring in heavy equipment and remove that. You can't just say, well, I'm not sure what to do. So we had to make sure that we got those people on the team as well. And then for me, decision making, I had to be able to enforce that. The topics are always open for discussions. The team is encouraged to voice their opinions. But at the end of the day, the decision is mine, and I have to make one and be decisive and really stick with that point of view. So once I have everyone's input, I say, okay, whether it's my decision or yours, this is the direction we're going in, and make sure that everyone on the team is on board. So a big thing with this project, team performance cannot be understated. When you're launching a new project, and that starts with making your plan. So when we were making our plan, we had to begin with the fact that we just had $1 million of equipment that was delivered, showed up out of the back of the building, and they said, figure it out. Which sometimes is what the military does. They give you something and they say, okay, go. So once we did that and we waded through everything and we figured out exactly what we had by making an inventory list, how it worked and what it was used for, we had to start making our training plans. So we got organized, we sorted through the equipment, now it's time to get down to training. Training prior to any real world mission, especially for the FCERT mission, gave me the ability to measure our performance as a team, how we operated, do we have cohesion, is there something that's just not fitting right, as well as the individuals. Being a brand new mission to kind of the Air Force and definitely our unit, it took me a while as the NCOIC to figure out what roles were needed within the team besides just myself. And once I had an understanding of those roles, it took me a while to figure out who to put in each one and make sure that I had the right person in the right place, and then realizing that you don't always get it right on the first time, making adjustments as needed. For this one, as I've mentioned several times, dealing with fatalities, it was discovered that even during exercises where you're dealing primarily with mannequins or maybe role players with some face paint, that we had some members that while they're extremely dedicated to the mission, they just could not handle being around a dead body. They couldn't handle the idea of the scenario that this could have been a real body. We had one where they said, this is your sister, and we had a member whose sister had recently died. They say, hey, I just realized I can't handle this. That does create a limp fact for the team. If we have another member that can handle it go down, they break their leg or get injured somehow, we can't swap this person in and out. But it doesn't disqualify them because there are other duties that they can perform. We found out at the Colorado mudslide that they had this happen. They had some members identify, I can't be around the dead bodies, but they were crucial in working with local law enforcement and playing a giant role in trying to narrow down some of the missing person cases, because that mudslide was just so devastating that they took out communications, and so many people that just weren't at home and couldn't get on their cell phone were listed as missing. So we did have airmen that couldn't be around dead bodies, but still were able to fulfill their role in the mission. So that just goes back to realizing who you have on your team and what their strengths and weaknesses are, and identifying those weaknesses. They were still able to turn those airmen into strong members of the team. And then finally, I would say that managing this project was daunting at times. Like I said, we were just handed $1 million worth of stuff. Didn't know what it was. It was just out in this Connex box, and the military said, go. So that was nerve-wracking to begin with. But just utilizing my background and definitely a lot of push from the leadership, and I mean positive push. We started off by just setting some more manageable goals. We started with, what do we have? What training do we need with the equipment and just outside training of that? How are we going to build? How are we going to put our team together? And then what is our suspense date? When are we going to be ready, or when does the military say we need to be ready to stand this mission up and be certified to perform these tasks? And then finally, this was an additional duty. So this was handed to services because we already had the mortuary piece. So then we had to figure out, you can't just not be in services for the rest of your career. So what is our timeline to kind of keep this a project for different people in kind of a revolving door? And we settled on about 2 years is where it takes you 6 months to be trained. You can perform it for this long, and then you need to get back into your primary duty because we all still owe training to the warfighting mission and be sure that we're good to go. So in addition to that, our planning and scheduling really had to be laid out and delivered to leadership, because with this being an additional duty, they needed to know what team members were on this team at any given time, and when did they get them back to roll into their primary duties. So that being said, after 2 years of all this hard work and training and planning and training and team building and training and planning, we were finally able to perform our mission in front of our evaluation board, and that's when all of our hard work and this staying on track with this project was finally realized. The execution and completion of this project culminated when we passed our evaluation and became a certified Homeland Disaster Response Force known as the Fatality Search and Recovery Team. So we ultimately turned this project into a program, but we first had to prove that our unit was able to implement and sustain this mission, or they were going to yank it and move it to another base. So our ability to break down the task into smaller, more manageable parts, put the right people in the right places, and making and sticking with our plan and schedule were key to making this project a overwhelming success. So thank you for listening to how I was able to manage and lead this project into completion.